All right. We're trying some things here. Trying a different mic. We are trying a button that I pressed that unmuted the mic, switched the scene, and I think set out the tweet. Although I'm curious to see whether it actually worked. All the things that I forget, I'm trying to make happen as a single button did all of this for us. So the big question is, when I'm looking this way, is it going to work? I put grip tape around this thing, so it's hopefully not going to kind of swing back in my face the whole time. It's doing a little bit, but let's see. So, hi everybody. Thanks for hanging out. I said hi in text. Mic is a bit low. Okay, let me see if I pull it up a little bit in the UI, if that helps a little bit. This mic is a tiny bit quieter than the one I've been working with. So hopefully by cranking the audio, you all can hear me okay. If not, I will have to find a booster. And if we end up not liking it, I'll switch back to the headset and you all can let me know. Hi everybody, I already said hi to in the text chat. And then hi Nerdroid and Imagine a Puddle, who I have not seen yet. Bring back that LifeX project you have, and instead of changing lipo, let's swing the mic around. Well, the funny thing is I actually don't anymore have that LifeX light set up, but I've got a new light up here, an Elgato light, that allows me to change a lot of stuff on it. I'll actually show it to y'all real quick. Yeah, SM7B. It's quiet, and I even have an inline booster. So let's switch over to our actual share. And I'll show you all. I have this light right here, and I was thinking about doing a project to let you guys all control this. You're going to watch me staring into the face of the sun. Oh my God, but I'm not going to do that. So anyway, in theory, we could actually do that. All right, so what are we working on today? So the primary goal for today, yeah, it's the key light, Joe. The primary goal for today is to make a Vue toggle that makes it possible for the glossary page table of contents to, oh my gosh, struggle bus. The glossary page table of contents to be toggled when you're on the mobile view. That's the primary thing. If we have a little bit of extra time after that, we will review Tonko's pull request to get multi-language seeding working and potentially even launch it. And then also we can have a toggle for user preference. And I don't think we'll get to all this, but user preference for my preferred language, and then also a toggle for show all resources only for my language, only for English. So again, that's a lot. We only have an hour. We're definitely not going to make it through all of that. But one thing I would say is that on the one hand, the progress of OnRamp is best served, hey Vince, by some of these other things. But for me, I'm trying to make videos that on playback are interesting, and I think we've spent a lot of time beating our heads against the same things over and over. So I'm trying to switch it up a little bit. So I figured we have some Vue components that we need to build. And so, yeah, stretch goals, exactly. So this is goal stretch goals. Oops. And I actually just looked at it, and I realized that I kind of don't want to launch it until these other things are here. I keep pushing back the things we need for launch, just because I don't want like people who are looking at the Portuguese version to not really get a good experience on day one launch of the database thing. So between the last stream and today, we've been doing a lot of work that you can take a look at in the repo. There's been a lot of merge pull requests and issues we've talked about, primarily having to do with translations. There's a lot of complexity going on with translations and moving our data over to translations. So the existing data over to translatable database backed system. So you can see things like Vince started some work on migrating this, and then Tonko and I worked a little bit on it. I worked on it last night, and he worked on it this morning, and that's the pull request here. So there's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of changes happening there, but that's not what we're doing today. Hey, Lee, good to see you, man. I'm doing good. Glad to see you here. I expected to see you on the Twitch side, not the YouTube side, though. All right, so these are our primary goals for today. So I just wanted to switch things up and just say, let's build a Vue component. That's just going to be the thing we're going to do. So I was going to say it was going to be the first Vue component, but we actually already have one. So actually, oops, let me make sure I'm up to date on everything. And so we have our first Vue component here. Thank you, John Sugar, for building that. And so this allows us to switch our current language, and we needed this as soon as we had more than 3 or 4 languages. So we'll actually look at that one real quick, and I'm going to treat this as if you all have general knowledge of, but not deep experience in Vue. And I know that's not true for everybody watching, but again, the point of OnRamp is to also create watchable videos for later, for after the fact. So let's take a look at it. So by default, if you are working with Laravel, you're going to have a couple root level files that define what your JavaScript situation is. They're both the same. YouTube better sometimes, yeah. So you've got so you got the one we have open, which is webpack.mix.js, and this defines to Laravel Mix and Webpack what your assets look like. And this is a pretty stock one here. The only big difference between here and the generic one is that we are doing a little bit more Tailwind stuff than you get out of the box. And then also, I forget who it was, but somebody added a browser sync so that when you run NPM, it'll actually be syncing your changes quickly, like through like script injection into your browser. Hot module reloading, that kind of stuff. So what this mainly tells us is all of our JavaScript is happening in this resources/js/app.js file. That's what really matters when we're thinking about this. Hey, Brian, good to see you, man. Brian is OG Laravel, just if anybody doesn't know him. He's been around for a very long time doing WordPress and Laravel stuff. So, all right, resources.js, app.js. So when you go to app.js, the first thing it's going to do is going to pull up Bootstrap. And this stuff comes by default. That was yours. Thanks, John. Bootstrap comes by default, but this is not Bootstrap, although you notice bootstrap.js is loading Bootstrap. This is a Bootstrap file. And so it's pulling in lots of dependencies like Axios and setting Axios to have the right header set up and stuff like that. And then once you get into app.js, the first thing it does is pulls in Vue, and then it gives you an example of what it could look like to either manually pull all of your Vue components in from the components directory, or if you do this thing right here, it'll just pull every single .vue component out of this components directory and load all of them. I said on Twitter I was going to slow down speaking, and I totally lied. Website design, thanks for following, and thanks for letting everybody see my new GIF that I just added. I totally forgot about that. I will try to slow down speaking. I may have been lying a little bit, but only a little bit. Browser sync and hot model reloading are definitely not the same thing. I totally agree. And I almost went into a whole rant about that and decided not to waste y'all's time with that. Browser sync is not as smart as hot module reloading. Hot module reloading is more complicated to set up and has a lot more moving pieces, but does a much better job of just popping bits and pieces of your code in and out, whereas browser sync is much dumber. It just blanket replaces a whole bunch of things. Joe, I love the idea of moving your browser sync connected method down or pop up somewhere else. Okay, so what we have right here is it's importing using just normal JavaScript syntax a single file component. I forget what the term is for that, where you have a Vue component that has its JavaScript, its template, and its CSS all in one file named .vue. And we'll look at that in a second. So it's importing it into this variable named language switcher. And then when we new up our Vue instance, which is bound to the app container, which is basically like the entire page. This is how Laravel does it often. People in Laravel do it often. We bind this as a component. So if we wanted to make our own component, it's unique, thanks. If we wanted to bind our own component, what we would do here is we would just duplicate the import and say, okay, what's the name of our component going to be? So we're going to build a component. Let's go take a look at the page that we're actually going to build it on. It's going to be the glossary. And the glossary right here looks great. You've got your table of contents here. However, and actually I'm going to do this in Chrome. I don't think I have anything open in my Chrome, but just to make sure. Where's my Chrome, please? Oh, I didn't have anything open at all. Okay. Chrome dev tools are better. Thanks, Lee. When you get to this page here, you get this big, long, and going to be much longer table of contents before you actually get to the page itself. And as you can see, there's also some design changes we're going to want to make here. So what we're going to do is clean up this design thing right here real quick, do some Tailwind modifications, and then we're going to build a Vue component that is a very simple toggle Vue component that just makes it so that there's like a show hide button on this, something like that. We're going to build it very simply, and then I'm sure that people who have like design perspectives are going to come in. I actually think that Adam Wathan recently built like here's my favorite way to do a toggle thing on one of his streams. So I'm going to build it the way I've always built them. But if all of y'all have been like watching his streams or doing this, just for what it's worth, like I wrote a lot of Vue in the early days of Vue, before there's documentation, before there's teaching, and I haven't written a lot of Vue since then. So there's been a lot of kind of like, here's how we do Vue things that everybody else at Titan knows, because they all write Vue day to day, but I don't write it day to day. So I'm actually not very much of a Vue expert. I got really good at the beginning when there was only so much to know. And then, I mean, I got good. I don't even know how to say I got really good. And then I don't use it a lot day to day. So I'm a casual Vue user. So I'm perfectly open for y'all telling me, dude, that's totally not how we do things. But the first thing I got to do is fix up these Tailwind styles, because that's driving me absolutely bonkers. So fix Tailwind styles on mobile glossary. Let's get to it. All right, so that page is probably going to be just Vue's glossary.blade.php. And it is. So let's pull them up side by side. And here's how we did it walking uphill both ways. Yeah, I feel like such an old man when I do these streams. Y'all don't even know. Okay, so if anybody's having trouble reading this at any point, please let me know. So the first thing I want to do is get this table of contents to not get pushed down so far. Oh my goodness, I can't even see anything in here. All right, where's my little handle? Give me a handle. Oh, my handle's here. Gosh, getting the resize handle on this thing is sometimes the absolute worst. Okay, there we go. There's my resize handle. Okay, so you just use your inspector here and say, wait a minute, what's coming on here? Okay, we've got a top margin on the table of contents, which probably makes sense on a wider, but we don't want it now. So we're going to go find that table of contents right here, and then we've got a margin top of 10. So for now, we're just going to make that only apply on the medium, and then just see how that treats us. Okay, so now we're not getting spaced out. Also, this thing right here, I feel like doesn't necessarily need to be that spaced out. The biggest problem is this right here, I have not extracted to a partial. So if I change it on this page, this glossary section, I'll have to go every other page that uses that same gray thing. I'll have to fix it there too. Although, interestingly, wait a minute. Why is the glossary using it different than all the rest of them? Okay, hold on. Notice that? Learn and glossary is not the same. All right, so when this glossary was built, it has different styles applied to it. So let's get it back in sync with the rest of the styles. So the learn page, I think, is the modules.blade.php page. So let's grab it from modules and then get the glossary page to use it back in sync with the styles of the rest of the page. So this is a point where if you say, wait a minute, I need to have the same style on multiple pages, even with Tailwind, this is a time for you to start thinking about extracting components. The thing is, this isn't the style of OnRamp in the end. This is just basically the bootstrap version of Tailwind. I grabbed a template and threw stuff in here, and we're going to come back later and do real designs. So we're not going to worry about extracting components because those components will change a lot as we design them. Yeah, Tailwind is amazing. All right, so the only thing I'm going to copy here is the translation syntax. Because it's already written out well. So, oh, that's not what I intended. All right, and then let's pull out this one. Okay, so that now, it's the spacing isn't as wonky and it's in line with the rest of them. Great. So table of contents. Okay, so the next thing I'm noticing is that there's way too much padding around here than way more than I want. Once again, because I'm just copying and pasting things around instead of actually building the design we're eventually going to have, this is a place where Tailwind is going to feel a little bit clunkier because the padding around this thing is embedded here, and this phrase right here is going to exist in a lot of places on the site. And it's this PX12 that we're running into. It's interestingly, it pulls the padding off on medium. So what I think I want to do is just drop this down to a PX6. Much better. I don't know why it was up to 12. That was huge. So the problem is now what I need to do is basically find this across the site, and hopefully it's just like that, and then just modify it to be a PX6 instead of PX12. Hopefully it says found it in 6 different. Perfect. Exactly what I wanted. We don't need it in the cache. We don't need it in the cache. We don't need it in the cache. We need it in the cache. All right. All right, back to the glossary page. All right, nice and clean. Okay, and then here, I think these are maybe spaced out a little bit more than they need to be. So let's just come in here and see. I think it's that margin top that's the issue. Yep. So we got a margin top 6 on all of these items, and that's only on this page. So let's look for a margin top 6 on our LI, and let's make it a margin top 2. And then on medium, we'll throw it up to margin top 6. That didn't work. What did I do wrong? Margin top 2. Oh, I actually kind of want it to be margin top nothing at this view. Crazy. Okay, that's a little closer. All right, cool. And do I want this header to be a little bit less of a margin left 2, margin bottom 3? Yeah, so I think the style in here is a little bit weird. So you notice we have the padding, bottom padding on this thing, but it's not on this thing. There's a div that wraps both of them, and I'd rather just throw that margin on the div. So it's this div right here that wraps the whole header of the thing. So I'm going to give it the margin bottom 2, and then I'm going to pull the margin bottom 3 off of this. It's a little bit smaller, and then because we had a margin bottom 3 before, I'll do medium margin bottom 3. I actually might make a margin bottom 1. Okay, I think that's probably good. And let's make sure that it still looks good on this page. Still looks good here, but when we go down to the mobile version, it feels much cleaner. Oh, except, all right, so these are getting wrapped. So there must be some kind of a max width on these or something. So let's figure out width 3/4. So we don't want a width 3/4 when they're full width. So let's look at that width 3/4 right here and make that a medium width 3/4. So now they can go full width. Okay, so you're getting that 3/4 width here. I'm not sure if we're going to keep that around, but let's just keep it around for now. And then when we are down on the mobile version, then we are going to get it out to the full width. Feels much cleaner now. I like this a lot better. That footer needs to be fixed on mobile. If anybody feels like a project, I won't fix that right now. And let's figure out why is this. Uh-oh. Chrome DevTools is crapping out on me. What's putting that? There's a width full, medium, margin bottom 12. I'm not sure why we got a margin bottom 12 on there. I'm hoping that's not one that's on all the pages, but it might be. Let's see how many of those pages have that same width full, medium, PR 12, margin bottom 12. Is that something that's across all of them? Yep, it is. Margin bottom 12 feels kind of huge. Yeah, margin bottom 12 is pretty big. It's fine when there's very little content on the page, but on these actual pages, it feels, especially in mobile, it feels pretty huge. So let's just go for all those. Once again, doing this kind of janky thing we're doing here, where we just pop that down to margin bottom 6 and hopefully don't regret it later. So just save all, and then close all. I always forget the syntax for all those. All right, so back to our glossary. We've cleaned up the styles a little bit. All right, feels a lot better. Now let's talk about this Vue component that we're going to do here. So there's a couple things we need to think about. One of them is that we're going to have to be passing this data in. So we have to encode it to JSON as we pass it into Vue. We also have to build the Vue component. So let's just do everything. The easiest way to build these components, and even if you don't have a language switcher, you're going to have an example component. Like this language switcher was built when he duplicated the example or renamed the example component. So it's always easiest if you're not familiar with Vue to start with that example component and modify it. So let's call it, we might just call it toggle and give it a slot actually. And I know that a lot of people, so there's a convention that all your components should be two-word names. And it's so funny because we always laugh about calling it like toggle thing or something like that. But I'm just going to call it toggle because it's a better name. All right, so we now have a component called toggle. And we need to go back into that resources app.js and register it. So we're going to call it toggle. And we're going to import it from toggle.vue. And then we're going to bind it in here. Okay, and then when we use it, we're now going to, rather than passing in JSON, you can use a slot. Yeah, that's what I was saying. I was going to use a slot. So interestingly, this is not a true toggle because this is a toggle that we only want to be a toggle at certain sizes. Unless we, well, you know what? The easiest way to do that is just to have the HTML on the page twice. One for the toggle and one for the normal one, and then just basically hide and show those two duplicate sections depending on the screen that you're on. And we might just start there because it's going to be cleaner and easier. Why define components in the Vue instance, not with the Vue.component? I don't know if it's better to do it this way. It is a little bit of kind of like the becoming the Laravel way of doing it just because that's what it shows in the Bootstrap. But I mean, I think they both do exactly the same thing. So, I have a slight preference from it that I could totally be told doesn't matter. Actually, I'm sure it doesn't matter, but I am a fan of the idea of creating things. I prefer to create things where the constructor, like in PHP, for example, I would much rather create something past its needed state in the constructor and then allow it to be what it is, rather than creating a thing and adding modifications. Or in the case of Vue.component, it's almost the opposite. You're kind of like modifying it and then doing it. So I think this is, the benefit of this is, I think it's much clearer. And I think I like that, especially for people who aren't familiar with Vue. All right, so for now, what we're going to do is we're actually just going to create 2 versions of the table of contents. I don't know if I'm going to regret that later, but we're going to start there because I think it's the simplest option. So this is basically going to be the desktop version. And then later, if we decide we want to and have time, we can modify it so that the toggle itself actually handles the responsivity of it. But I think this is the cleanest option for now. So let's just start like this. So we're going to create 2 versions. They should show side by side. We'll use CSS to hide them and show them based on which one they're in. So this would basically be medium. I forget what the hidden in medium block or something like that. It'd be something like hidden medium block, but I can't remember if that's exactly what it is. Let's go with the display block. All right, so block and then hidden. Yep, that was it. Okay, cool. So in theory, you'll not notice the difference at all because, so let's just give it like a border top and then this one a border bottom so we can see if they're actually swapping out correctly. All right, so that one's got a border top, this one's got a border bottom. So you can see that we're seeing 2 different instances of the exact same thing. So now inside of our border top one, what we're really actually probably going to do here is this is where our Vue toggle is going to go, and then this right here is going to be what we pass in as the Vue slot. All right, so let's use our toggle component, and we're going to pass our table of contents in as a slot, and let's see what we can do here. So first of all, let's get rid of all this stuff that we actually didn't need. Even though this thing we were looking at before was a toggle. Well, I guess we can, we can keep this around. So we don't have any props. Okay, actually, sorry. I was telling you all that I'm going to treat this as if you don't know Vue, and rushing through it is not going to help you with that. So here's our Vue component. The template is basically, this is what its HTML is going to render as, and you always are going to put like a parent item here. The data is its own internal data, and then there's also props, which is properties that are passed in. Methods are things that you can call on it, and then that's the main things we're going to deal with today. Dustin says, don't forget ARIA hiding one of them eventually so screen readers don't see dupe navigation. I love that idea. I will be honest, those are the types of things I Google every time I do it. So Dustin or anybody else, if you have that syntax handy, feel free to just paste it in the chat so I can work with it. Okay, so let's get out of language switcher. So in general, with a toggle, what you're going to do is basically say, hey, I'm being toggled. And you're going to do, on this div, you're going to do something that says basically show me if what is inside here is true. And so we'll say, well, let's have a thing called is open or is shown or something like is toggled, is on. Well, let's just stick with is open because that's what we have here. So this right here in the data method is returning what its default state is. So by default, is open is false. So what we're going to do in this one is then allow somebody to make it become true. Which means we need a button for that. But if we need a button for that, then that vshow shouldn't be on the root one. It should be on a child one because it's going to need to have a button next to it, right? So, okay. And I'm going to try and make this the simplest possible way, and then we'll build on it so it's really clear for anybody who's learning. So this is going to be like a button. And when you click it, you're going to say toggle, actually just toggle. I don't even know if you need to have the parens when you're calling a method. I don't think you do. So we're going to make a method named toggle. And that method is going to, for right now, let's just have it do something like alert yay. So in theory, if somebody clicks on this button, this @click handler in Vue is going to call the toggle method, and the toggle method is going to give us an alert that says yay, and it's going to have nothing to do with whether this is open or not. So, and we should always just be seeing this. Oops. aria hidden equals true. But how do you define hidden as true? Or you mean aria is hidden as true on based on the toggledness? Do the aria things also read the well, let's just do this. Aria hidden equals the opposite of is open, and hopefully that's going to be the right thing. I don't know if that's correct. So I haven't done it with Vue stuff and media queries before. So okay, cool. So let's take a look here again. All right. So one of the things you always want to have is you want to have your Vue sniffer thingamajig, whatever it's called. All right, so we click toggle and we get yay. So look at us, we're good to go. You need the colon on the attribute as well, thanks. Yeah, so what they were telling me is when you do aria hidden equals bang is open, this is literally just going to pass the string bang is open to the aria hidden. If you want this right here to be processed by Vue, you do this, and now it's saying set this attribute equivalent to however Vue evaluates this string. So this now becomes JavaScript. Yeah, so Dustin, the question here is, anyway, whatever. We'll leave it like this and see what happens. Thanks, Dustin. All right, so we've got that. So now what we want to do is when toggle happens, we actually want to toggle it. So we want to say this dot is open should be equal to the opposite of this dot is open. That's like the core toggle, right? Just set this thing to be the equivalent of what it used to not be. So then we'll come in here, we'll hit toggle, and look, hey, I'm being toggled. So this is the simplest possible toggle situation that you can do in Vue. So in theory, whether or not it's toggled, once we switch out to the bigger view, it's always going to be there because right now they're literally two different pieces of code, which is a little bit janky. I don't know if that's how we're going to end up doing it in the end, but just a reminder here, like, let's do this here. This is the non-Vue version. You're going to see it in that one, but when we go down here, boom, you're not in the Vue version anymore, okay? Well, I guess that doesn't matter because that's, okay, so let's pull that slot in. So what you want to do here is basically make it so that whatever content gets passed into, where's that toggle? Probably, okay, so basically all the HTML that we pass in between the opening and closing of this Vue toggle instance, and actually, could we just do this? I think we can. And get rid of the wrapping div. So anything that gets passed in between here and here gets sent into the slot. And so we can put the slot wherever we want. So where we put it was within the hiding thing. Cool. So we've got a toggle. That's the simplest thing we could have done. So now we can just say, show hide. Now, there's all sorts of things. We can customize what the button style looks like. We can allow you to pass in a prop that's the text to the, all that kind of stuff. But in essence, we've got the basics there. I do want to put a little bit of, I would like for this, especially in this version, to be a bulleted list. So let's make this, okay, list disk PL4, I think, is the default for a bulleted list. Oof, that needs a margin left. Okay, so there's the basics. That's padding left still seems high. Is there stuff on the, no? Okay. All right, so we've got that show hide. We could do a lot of other things style-wise. I do think that when it's showing, I kind of want it to be, we have some padding things where I think this is a little too close here. So we'll work on that. And obviously this show hide button should be different. So if we were designing this not in a custom component we were thinking we're going to be using elsewhere, we would probably just throw it right here. But the question now becomes, is that where it would make sense for it to be on the toggle? So this is where extracting things into like a toggle component versus a toggle table of contents component becomes more difficult, because there's styles I would apply to this if this were only used in this one context that I can't justify applying to this right now. The simplest thing we're going to do right now is just we're going to throw a style on this, and then we're going to move on to something else because I don't want to sit here all day tweaking this particular UI. But anybody who wants to is welcome to come back in here and work on optimizing that. I will also note, because I mentioned earlier that this is not the final design. Noemi, our designer at Titan, did this logo, but the rest of this is a template. If you've ever gone to the layouts app, I posted the place I copied this from. This is going to get a real design soon, which is why I'm not paying a lot of attention to design, because it's going to be kind of revamped design-wise once we actually figure out the structure of the site. But it's hard to do a really good design when you don't quite know how the site is going to be structured, which is why I've been holding off on really kind of digging into implementation. I also will say I have a good general aesthetic sense, but I'm not a designer. So me wasting my time on design is often a waste, as I said. So I'd much rather have, when we figure out how it's actually going to be shaped, then have Noemi come in and do some design work and tell us all what to do. So I'm just going to do a tiny little bit of cleanup here. I'm going to keep it at show hide. Now, one thing you could do is change the text that's showing here based on whether it's open or not. Again, that's an optimization somebody could add later, but we don't need to do that right now. So I'm just going to give this like a padding of 3 and like a border of 1. And I kind of think I wanted to give this a actually, no, I'll just put it on the thing itself. Okay, so that's too much padding. And I want it to be border rounded. Small, I think, is what the thing is. Nope, that's not it. Is it just rounded now? I think they might have taken it off the border. Yeah, okay, cool. All right, and then I was going to do a hover state, but nobody's actually going to see a hover. Okay, I don't like how the padding is, so I'm going to give the padding, the X padding, a little bit of a boost to make that button feel a little bit better. And Dustin is saying, yeah. And I mean, honestly, since we're talking about that, we can just do that right now. Show hide is a little bit janky. So I'm trying to remember. It would be, it's not VHTML. Oh, it'd just be this, right? Button label. Oh, that's what you said, computed label. So why not? If we're going to be teaching stuff. So one of the other things you can do in addition to methods is you can do computed properties, which are very similar to methods, except the computed properties are, they are supposed to be the type of thing that doesn't get run every time the Vue re-renders, but only every time the data that they depend on changes. And so Vue can be smart enough to cache this. Upgrading Dave, thanks for following. A little bit of Shaq shimmy. So this Vue is smart enough to not rerun these every time, but instead calculate and only reevaluate them when the data they depend on changes. And so whereas Toggle, it's not like Toggle's going to rerun every single time the Vue is re-rendered, so it can just be a method, and it makes sense as a method. Like you can't make a computed property for an action. Methods are good for actions, but anytime you have something that's not an action the user takes, but something that is being calculated on the page, try to do a computed property if at all possible. Shaq is life. Upgrading Dave. Hey. Okay, so what would the button label be? So Dustin already actually wrote it for us in the chat. Thanks, Dustin. And so what it's basically going to say is if it's open, it should be the word hide. And if it's closed, then it should be show. And so in theory, if I did this right, button label gets called here, and button label is going to be cached and will only get reevaluated by Vue when isOpen changes. So it'll be this.isOpen actually. Hey, Tobholm. That sounds like a, I'm not making fun of your name, but it just reminded me of like a castle in some of those like medieval fantasy type things. All right, so show hide. Look at that. Thanks, Dustin. All right, I still want that button to be a little bit wider. And this is not really the optimal place for it, but one thing I do like is that having it up at the top here means that if I tap it, then I don't also have to all of a sudden have to move my finger or mouse or whatever somewhere else to close it. So while this is kind of like an awkward spot for it, it actually is very user-friendly having it up there. Hey, Milkesh. So yeah, so I think we're just going to keep it like that for now. And again, this is not beautiful and perfect, but it does the job. It's a really simple thing, right? You didn't need a component that you got from somebody else. It's literally just toggling, something. Yeah, so that's it. So let's write down what we just did and move on to stretch goals. Go team, look at this. 11:34, and we still got time for stretch goals. So we created a toggle component, and then we, for mobile users, show the toggle component, the Vue toggle component, and then for desktop, show blade. So we could have built, like I said, we could have built a complicated Vue thing that has its own knowledge of toggling. And what that would have been is, instead of a toggle component, it would have been a table of contents component, because that Vue component that was aware of how to change between the toggle version and the not toggle version would likely have had some intelligence in there that was really relevant to the specific thing. You might sometimes say, well, all of my toggle components will all switch at medium. Okay, cool. Or you can even pass, like, what breakpoint do you switch at into the toggle component. So in theory, we could build it in such that the whole concept where, having two copies of the thing and one that toggles and that one doesn't, well, okay, I'm actually almost tempted to build that, because it would be kind of fun. Because all we would have to do is basically be toggling not vshow, but toggling MD, hidden in MD, that kind of stuff. But no, we're not going to do it. That's not a good call, because that's going to be a lot of... But that might be something interesting to do, to turn this into one, and the toggle class will be smart enough to know that it's always going to be always showing the things above medium and always toggling below medium. So anyway, that's not what we need to do with our time right now. For the blade. All right, cool. Profit, question mark. All right, so let's commit that in. See what we did, like a collapsible succession. Yeah, exactly. We made more changes than I thought. Oh, because we did a whole bunch of global. So sorry. Git add everything. Git commit. And what do? We tweak mobile styles, and then add toggle component and use it on glossary table of contents. Okay, cool. Profit is always number 3. Dang it. Added a list item. Did I? Oh, crap. I sure did. All right, so there's a git undo. It's soft git undo last commit. I always forget this one. I have a shortcut, but I don't want to use the shortcut, because I want you all to see what I'm actually doing. This right here. Git reset hard. Yeah, soft head one. So what we're gonna do right now is undo that commit we just did. So git reset soft head -1 says, so head is wherever I am on Git. Head -1 means one commit ago, and soft means uncommit it, but don't delete all the changes that were made there. Because if we did hard, it would delete all the changes from the last commit. All right, so we're back to that same status where we were a second ago. So let's go over to our table of contents and get rid of this is the non-Vue version. Thank you so much, Jonas, for catching that. Now let's recommit that same thing. Oh, had I pushed already? Oh, I pushed. Okay, well, you know what? Nobody has pulled since I pushed a second ago. So this is the only time where it's acceptable to force push is if you're the only person working on a branch, and or you are in a very carefully controlled circumstance and you know that nobody else has pulled down this branch and it's not master. So basically what would happen is if I did git push right now, I'd forgotten I'd pushed. It's going to go, well, can't do that because you pushed already and now you're pushing a different git history. But I am going to override that. But if you're new to Git, don't ever use git push-force. Only use it if you know exactly what you're doing, because you can make really big mistakes. So I can do that because nobody else has pulled down that history in the last 45 seconds. Okay, so what we're doing next, let's see what Notion tells us. Notion says, stretch goals, review Tonko's pull request to get multi-language seeding working, user preferences for my preferred language, toggle for show all resources, only my language is only for English. I'm kind of, forge push with lease is better. I'm not sure what that means. Toggle, I kind of, on like we're in the Vue world, I kind of want to build this. Let's build this. Even though, again, functionally, Tonko's PR is more important, let's make this one that's about building Vue components. Why not? It's like it's an episode. Hey, Hey, Harach. Don't do what I do what I say. Bug found. No, do what I do. Totally do what I do if you know what you're doing. That's what I'm saying. Like, git force push is the right thing to do right here. But if you don't know, if you're not able to make the decision of when git force push is the right thing to do, don't do it. Right? You know what I mean? So like, do it when it's the right thing. But if you don't know it's the right thing, just don't ever do it until you know. Force push is not something to play around with, if that makes sense. So don't play with fire. But yeah, no, I'm definitely not saying don't do it. I'm just saying don't do it when you know what you're doing. I got my right. Previous time, you get my name right from the first time. Thanks, didn't know about force push. Oh man, that could have saved me hours with the past couple of years. Yeah, I'm late. Got a speaking gig. Hey, congratulations. Welcome. Thanks for joining and good luck tomorrow. Okay, so we are going to build another Vue component for the show all resources only for my language, only for English. Now, this one actually might not make any sense to build it until we get Tonko's pull request. Yep, that's true. But I think Tonko's pull request is good because he and I were pairing on it. So we're just going to do it really quickly, and I think it's going to be good. So what happened was Vince Mitchell recently did some work to start taking the resources that already exist on OnRamp and are translated already, and to try and get them to the point where they're ready to be used in the new database-backed version that we've been building together. So he started the work. I pulled it over last night and did a whole bunch more work, and then this morning Tonko and I paired together, and Tonko did almost the rest of the work, maybe the rest of the work while I tootled around in Photoshop and kind of watched what he was doing and answered a few questions here and there. So I've already read almost all this code. I'm just going to skim it real quick to make sure it makes sense. So basically, you know what? I will review it with you all so you know what we're doing, so it's going to make sense when we're building this Vue component. So first thing we did was allow a module to have its name be translated. So actually, let me show you where the what point I had gotten to last night. So last night, I modified Vince's work to have all of the this file right here is the file that's our current learn.en and learn.esp.php merged together into one. Once we start relating, I can't do that because you all can't see. Once we start relating people like completion and stuff like that to these modules, we can't keep reseeding them because the IDs will change and those relationships will break. But until they can actually check things off, we can use this file right here and just keep reseeding this particular thing over and over and over again until we're happy with what the general shape of our learning is. And actually, there's some modifications we might need to make that I don't think we have time for on this particular stream, that I think we might need to group resources into things because a lot of these have just so many resources. But anyway, what we did last night was a module can have the English version, Build a Basics website, but also other translations of that name. So it's the same module, but it has a different label on it. And then the skills can also have the English version and other ones. And resources, differently from, so module name, it's the same module but it's translated, same skills but translated. Resources, however, it's not necessarily like a stide treatment on MySQL and a Laracast treatment on MySQL. They're not the same thing in two different languages. They're two entirely different resources that may or may not cover the same thing. So resources are not translated versions of each other. Rather, every resource has a language. There's a list of Spanish language resources for this module, and there's a list of English language resources for this module. So that's what this pull request is doing. It's basically taking this thing that I built and then updating the rest of our structure to actually work around it. So modules, the name can be translated now using the Spatie package. Skills, the name can be translated now using the Spatie package. We now have a language property on the resource that's on the factory here and then on the table down here. And then we're modifying the names on those because when you're using that translatable package, the column stores the different languages as JSON on that column, and then the package takes the responsibility for pulling it out at the right language there. So changing these from string to JSON. And then also one thing that he noticed is that when you run this thing, the slugs were usually running on the English name, but now that the name has multiple languages, we had to run the slug on the English name, not on any of the other names. And then he just extracted this out a little bit from what I'd already done. And also I had set the translation of quite of these to be to do, and you can't, there's a unique on this. So if multiple are to do, then it throws an error. So he just kind of threw in generic ones in there. Yeah, I think this is it. So we're going to, this right here, this test, I think we're going to dig into that test real quick. So we're going to merge this, and then I'm going to hack on this test real quick, the database seeder test. Because I'm not sure why. I kind of think that what it's trying to do is just say, well, you know what? I'm pretty sure what he's doing here is assert that there's no exceptions, actually. So that's fine. I think we'll probably end up allowing this to be wrapped into just adding seeding to one of our other tests. But this is fine because what he did was basically every time he was working on the database seeder test, he would run PHP unit and it would run the database seeds and then tell him if an error happened. So you know what? That's fine. That's fine. Let's just keep it. All right. Let's merge this sucker and then we can go back to building that component. Thank you so much for your hard work on that. By the way, I realized, I think last week, that I don't know if it's on purpose or not, but Tregets backwards is stagger. Is that on purpose? Oh, no, it's not. It's staggered. Just kidding. I don't know what Tregets is. Never mind. I thought I knew, but I don't. Okay, thank you so much for your work on that, Tonko. So look at that. We reviewed and merged Tonko's PR to update database seeder to work with multi-language seed file. All right, cool. So what's next? Toggle. Okay, so the idea behind this toggle, let me run his code here and make sure it works, and then talk you all through what I'm thinking with these seeders. All right. Sorry, the fact that I accidentally capitalized the I in sites over there was driving me bonkers. Okay, so we're going to get GPR is get pull rebase. So I'm just trying to pull down the latest changes, and then now we want to migrate. So we're going to do PHP artisan. My text expander is not working. Artisan migrate fresh seed. So that just says wipe the whole thing, start from scratch. Composer dump autoload. Cool. So if you ever see that kind of stuff and you know that those classes exist, it's just because Composer, whatever action you just did, which is usually pulling something down from Git, didn't let Composer know, hey, I've changed the class map. You could run a Composer install and it'll fix it, but if you run Composer dump autoload, it just does the part where it's like resetting its cache. Composer basically keeps a cache of where all of your classes are to make it faster. And so this says refresh your cache. All right, cool. So in theory, let's go to the onramp.test instead of .dev. So in theory, we should be able to come into each of these sections. Oh, you know what? We have no terms. I guess we don't have any real terms. So that's something we're going to have to do before we launch. But let's put that in next steps.markdown because that's not going to be for today. That's just add real terms for glossary. Translating skill name we did. Language resources we did. That we've not done. That we did. Okay, cool. So toggle for show all resources or in my language. Okay, so let's go look. So when I'm on build a basic website, if I switch over to Spanish right now, you see, wait a minute. Tonko, something broke because I'm seeing the Spanish language courses. Okay, cool. So that's fine. One of the things I forgot to tell Tonko to do was to only show. So it's actually perfect for exactly what we're doing right now. Right now, it shows you all of the resources for all the languages on this module, which is not going to be our default. Our default is going to be only show the resources for the language that I currently have pulled. And that's perfect connected to this toggle. So basically the idea behind the toggle, let me just show you all what it's going to look like real quick. So this is going to be in the module show page, and there's going to be a toggle up at the top that says something like, where it'll go above here. They'll have 3 links, and they'll basically say show all resources, show only resources for my language, which actually is going to be the default. And then show only English resources. So that's going to be a toggle that exists somewhere on this page. And then by default, whatever one is picked is going to be bolded, right? So actually, the default will be show only resources for my language, but then quite a few other languages won't have it. And so we'll have to have some way to know, does this language even have resources available on this module? Because like right now we've got a lot of translations, but only Spanish has resources for modules. And so that's going to be something we have to come up with a solution for. Okay, so let's say we were to eventually make that into a real button that you can click, and right now this is it. That's not what it's doing. Right now it's showing all resources. So let's modify this to show only resources for my language. That's driving me nuts. Okay, cool. So we need to modify probably the module controller, and when it's showing me all, so this page right here is the module show. So we're on the module name build a basic website, and we are showing it. The third toggle should be only my language is in English. Show only resources in language, show all resources, show only. Oh, you know what? I think actually show only. Yeah, that's actually probably a good point. My language and English resources. That's a good point, because nobody would want to only show English without those from their language, or people likely wouldn't. Okay, so only for my language. All, and I think all from all languages is a little bit less likely to be chosen, so it's more likely to be only for my, and honestly, all resources might not happen. Maybe nobody wants that. But we've got only for my language and only for my language in English. Okay, cool. So let's go and actually make it do that. So again, this page right here is served by the module controller. So where is it getting its resources? Right here, module resources. So this right here is going to have to be filtered depending on the results of this toggle. So let's right now figure out what the easiest way. Let's do resources for user. I don't know if this is going to be the best way to handle it, but right now this is what I'm going to do. And so I'm going to go to my app module. So previously it was pulling resources as just the as this right here. So what we're going to do is public function resources for user, and it's basically going to say get the user's preference and then only select appropriate resources. So for right now, make this actually function. So language equals en. We're not going to allow people to pick it, right? You know what? We're going to do language equals locale. And that actually, I guess we actually don't need it for the user, right? Well, yeah, no, we will to get this preference, but we'll be able to get the user's language, because if a user has a preference set to English, but then they're logged into Spanish, we're not going to be doing it based on their language. They're going to be doing it based on the current language. That's so my language here in both of these should actually be currently selected language. So that's not right, because it's going to say en, right? Oops. Auth does not exist. Where did I use auth? Auth. I meant to do auth user. Did I do it here too? Module controller, auth user. What am I doing wrong here? Oh, sorry. Localize resources for use more specific resource. Yeah. Well, if I'm not logged in, it shouldn't say it doesn't exist, right? I thought the auth user, just if you're not logged in, you just get a null. Am I wrong? I guess we can try it. That'd bum me out. Okay, we're in a null. All right, hold on. Let's. Can you not call auth user when you're not logged in? I thought you didn't. It just returns null. Am I losing my mind? Somebody help me here. Yeah, of course, now it's working fine. It might have just cached it or something, because that's a perfectly acceptable thing to call. Okay, so back to it. Resources for user. You were saying localized resource for user. Well, yes, but I don't know whether that matters, because there's only one reason we're contextualizing resources for a given user right now, and it's because of localization. So for right now, it's going to be localized, called resources for user, and then if later we have other reasons to differentiate it, we'll know whether we want those other reasons to be applied to this one or not. And then at that point, if we want a separate one that's just the localized resources, and then a different one that's differently differentiated ones, we can. But right now I like this, because all I know right now is I care about just the resources for this user. So we actually don't need their language. We only need the current locale, and then we need their preference. So I can imagine that the preference would be something that we're going to store on the user or something like that, and it's going to be one of the option. It's going to be basically an enum, and the only options you can have are all or English and current. So it'd be only current, English and current, only English, or English and current, something like that, right? I imagine. I mean, that's not how we would store them, but let's imagine we're storing them that way. So let's just presume that this particular user has a language of locale, or a locale of locale, which I guess we don't need to store, and a preference of only current. And let's assume we actually were doing it that way. And then we did like, I don't know if this is exactly how we would structure it, but maybe just do a switch on preference. Wow, typing is getting hard. Case is going to be only current. And in that case, what would we be returning? We would be returning this resources where language is equal to locale. I think we could do this so that we don't even pull them from the database if they're the wrong language, which makes it a little bit more performant of a query. So I have a lunch meeting in 5 minutes from somebody who works in the same office as me. So unfortunately, I can't run late. I was about to say, dude, I'll do another half an hour. Unfortunately, I can't. So this would be pull from users' preferences or whatever, a cookie or something like that. So I think this is going to work because I think when we go this, we now should only see the the English versions, but not the Spanish versions. So let's see what happens. Hey, look at that. So now let's look at Spanish. And like that, we only get the Spanish versions. All right, so now we are currently correctly only seeing the resources in the language that we've selected. This is the toggle that we're going to be building if we have time. Nura1net, thank you for making Shaq dance on my screen. And thanks for following. So yeah, so we have enough here. I am still interested in building this module or this method right here in a way that doesn't rely on the user. But the only way I can think of right now is to pass the preference in and then to get the preference right here. And so I guess part of that is the question of where are we storing it or anything. But it's at least working. So I think what I'm going to put on next steps there, and it's starting to get awkward because I'm maintaining next steps both in here and in Notion, so I'll probably switch that out or something. But it's basically going to finish implementing the resources for user on module. And then that's also going to depend on us allow user to choose preference of which resources to show based on localization. And then, yeah, and that would be building that toggle. All right, so right now, these three, look like links, but they're not. So let's just do a real quick thing to, I think it's text right these days. Yeah, do that and then make it like that, and then probably I probably should make them all links. And they'll just be links that say like this doesn't do anything right now. I didn't close that one. That's why it's farting at me. Oops. Okay, so those are links, and if you click on them, they're just going to say not programmed yet, because that's just my favorite thing to do. All right, so we've got this right here, and then we got this right here. If you click on it, you just get a little error saying, oops, sorry, that's not actually coded yet. All right, cool. So what we were able to do was only show resources for the currently selected language, and then start building UI and logic around users selecting their preference for which resources to show. And things to do later. To finish, allow users to choose and save their preference around showing localized resources. And then correctly differentiate resource lists based on user preferences, and then test the above. And yeah, so we didn't make this stretch. We made this stretch goal. Done. I wonder if I can, boom. We made this stretch. No, we didn't. We started this one, but we didn't do it. And then we made this stretch goal. Or we just made this original goal. All right. Wow, come on, Notion. Give me some love here. All right. So that was a good stream. I really enjoyed that. So we've got some Vue in here. We've got a good seeder. Hey, VR Mashiro, thank you for making Shaq dance on my page with his little shoulder wiggle. And we know what we're doing next. And we're very, very, very close to the point. I keep saying this, but we're very close to the point where it's ready to launch the database packed version. So thank you all for chipping in and giving me great advice. Susanna, I'm really happy you understood the whole thing. The more y'all tune in, the more you're going to totally understand everything and be teaching me a ton. Thank you for following Marissa50 and making Shaq dance on my screen. Yeah, this was a ton of fun. Okay, let me switch over to the me version. Hey, look at that. Shaq was still dancing. You can see more of my office and you can see me. Hey, Morning Sci-Fi, thanks for joining. Y'all can see, wait, I got a new table and it's got my Cubs mug and what's his name on it? Anyway, I'll go. Thank you all. You're great. I'm going to see if I can get the outro with music playing. Tune in next time and all that jazz.